Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something on the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. If you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Also, if you or somebody you know would like to come on and have a chat with me, feel free to reach out to me on a social media platform. That social media platform is whichever one you are on, because I'm probably there too. And the best way to find me is go to isaacl.dev, and that'll be a list of all the different places that I currently am. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get started. We were having a conversation before we got started with my guest, and I promised him that I would be a bit more uplifting than I was when before we got started. So hopefully we can do that. Well, my guest today is Shawn Wildermuth. Shawn, do you want to say hello, introduce yourself?
I'd love to. I'm Shawn Wildermuth. I've been a Pluralsight author for I don't know how many years now. I got started in database development a long time ago. In fact, August will be 40 years from my first job. So it's been an exciting few decades. I don't know what you would say about that. Mostly these days, I do training as well as consulting for companies that need help with architecture and code reviews and those sorts of things. I still teach for Pluralsight. I also have a YouTube channel where I have a bunch of coding shorts, which are sort of video, around 10 minutes to teach something.
Oh, cool.
So you can check that out on YouTube.
Yeah, no, one of the things I'd love to talk about a little bit is like, I think that you are pretty active in like the content creation space. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on content creation. But before, I'd like to figure out how it got started for you. Like, when did you realize that technology was like the thing for you?
That's an odd story in many ways, because I got my first job when I was 16. I hadn't finished high school yet, and a friend of my mom's hired me to learn some things, and being paid minimum wage to write code, which it was probably overpaid for, even though it was $4.25 an hour.
Sure.
And I very much didn't want to be a programmer. I felt like I had a lot of skill with it, but there was something so uncool about programming. And so the idea that I would go to parties and people asked me what I did, and I didn't want to tell them, because it took me a while. It took me into my 20s before I realized that this is really, in some ways, what I was born to do. It's something that I feel like I do pretty well, and it's something I'm passionate enough about that I do probably way more than my wife would like me to do it. So I got started there. I ended up dropping out of high school, went to college, dropped out of college, and just been pretty much working. I left college mostly because I was trying to work full time as a developer as well as go to school at the same time. And at some point, I realized I didn't have the energy to do both, and I always expected to go back, but it never happened. So I've been working for primarily small and medium-sized businesses most of that time, at least until the last 15 to 18 years, when I sort of took a side route. I took the road not taken in some ways to start teaching.
Yeah.
I did some work for Developmentor, if anyone's old enough to remember them. They used to be a big training house, but I was actually hired to work with Chris Sells on some development tools they were doing. And being sort of inside that space, really, I kind of caught the bug. That's when I wrote the first book I wrote, technical book that I wrote, and that sort of gave me that that little serotonin hit of finding the story of how to teach somebody something isn't just listing facts.
Sure.
And I became very fascinated with that part of it. Even though I've been writing code through the whole teaching piece, because it becomes crucial to writing good content to actually be doing it day to day. So having these clients that introduced me to new weird problems that they've created for themselves, and they're want me to get them out of it, has been really helpful in the training part, because I feel like I can really talk to the problems that it's solving, not just that the tech is cool.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that's fascinating about that thing that you were talking about, like the education piece, is that I feel like there's people that have this. I don't know whether it's kind of an inclination or a want, and it kind of stems from like they really liked learning growing up, and then they realize like, oh, like I'm learning still as an adult, like I should help facilitate other adults learning as well. And I think that there's, that sort of, I guess, personality trait is something that I see a lot. Like obviously people that are very vocal on social media and tech, right? Like a lot of them are in the educator slash, hey, I'm writing blogs or creating videos. So like, do you remember like the first, I guess you could say, like the first time you realized like, hey, I really enjoy this kind of giving back or putting the ladder down sort of experience? Like, do you remember like the first time it actually happened?
Well, I think it started in small increments.
Yeah.
So again, to the old people watching, uh, it really came about when I got my first CompuServe account. Now, before then, I had always been the programmer at some small business, and so I didn't have other developers um, to uh, to deal with or to ask questions or to bounce ideas off of. And in many ways, I thought that's what the job was. You know, the old joke about you slide pizza under the door and code comes out,
Yeah. Yeah.
sitting in a dark room. Like that's really what a part of what appealed to me, because as a kid and even a young adult, I really was pretty bad at social gatherings. I was really bad at that part of it. And so when I got on CompuServe and when I started to work in companies where there were more developers than just me, I realized that I loved that sort of mentoring to help people figure out things. And it used to be just something I enjoyed doing, you know. This was years before Stack Exchange, but it was sort of the problem.
Yeah.
Someone help me solve this, and the next time I see it come up, I can pass it off to the next person. Or there was a developer earlier in my career that made me realize that um, he was presenting a great example. He never like said you have to do this or this. He was the lead, but he wrote such pretty code, easy to read code, clean code, that I wanted to aspire to that. And part of what I think uh, uh, drives me as someone who likes the teaching part, or the uh, um, teaching doesn't feel like the right word, is that idea of like I would like to mentor people. I'd like to bring people from one space to another to help them overcome, you know, the insecurity that often happens in this business. Because the reality is, I feel like we're told a lot of the time about what we're doing wrong. Oh, you're not doing writing REST correctly, or you aren't using microservices, or you're dot dot dot. Oh, you're just a PHP programmer, right? um, those sorts of things I really want to rally against, because that's sort of in my nature. I
Sure.
came from somewhat humble beginnings. Uh, and so I just want people that do this and do this well to know they're doing it well.
Yeah. There's something too about like when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're trying to help explain something and you see the light come on, right?
Hmm.
Like there's just something about that. And, I mean, not to be crass, but like if teachers and educators got paid more, like it would be something that I specifically would probably be interested in doing, right?
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where, unfortunately, certain job families or in industries, like there's better quality of life than others, right?
Yeah.
But it is something about like the education standpoint of it too, like, and coming from somebody like you who I think you can probably define yourself as like a self learner, right? You did go to school for a
Yeah.
little bit, but you eventually like, and then obviously since you've left school, you've been learning the whole time. Um, what do you think about kind of like the current wave of like self learning, right? Like you're a part of it because you're in the creator space for it, but it's like if
Yeah.
I'm new to tech and I want to learn like the newest front end framework or whatever, right? I just, I go to a web browser or maybe I go to ChatGPT or whatever, and it's like, hey, I want to learn Vue. and then
Right.
you're just inundated with just content, right? Like what
So
is
much
yeah,
content.
like so what is, what are your thoughts on like how current people learn, and like what are some of the paths that you've seen that are, that can lead to success instead of like that analysis paralysis or overwhelming sort of feeling that some people probably get?
It's interesting because I think that part of the challenge there is figuring out how you learn.
Sure.
And so, like opening up a browser, searching for whatever technology you need to learn, that will get you the sort of intro of it. Problem is, you start looking for one more video, one more video. Oh, I'll go ahead and buy something on Udemy, or I'll get a Pluralsight subscription, or LinkedIn Learning, or whatever the other platforms I'm not aware of, Dome Train. And I feel like that only gets you so far. I think some people really learn well from just the sort of didactic teaching, of someone talking you through them. But I think for most people, building it is what teaches them more. And so, the approach to the way I teach is different from some Pluralsight authors and some other people in that I want to show you me building it. That's the best way I know how to teach it is let's do it. Let's let me make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and then build upon that. And so a lot of the way I teach has always been let's open up an editor and let's do something
Yeah.
because that's been the best way I've learned. And in some ways it's related to sort of that pair programming idea, except that I'm teaching instead of building in sort of a pair programming. I feel like the people that are watching my courses are getting that it's approachable. I'm not some great developer that you have to look up to or admire. Like none of that matters to me. If you're getting it and you can see that we all do the same mistakes. We all um, have the same foibles. We all have to learn things we don't know.
Yeah. It's the learning thing you don't know is fascinating to me because I've joked about this a few times. There are just some things that I feel like I personally do not have the capability to learn. Like I've joked about like
Hmm.
trying to learn Go like 40 times, and I just have never been
Hmm.
successful in learning Go for whatever reason. I've learned other programming languages, but like there's a point in time when it's like, oh, if you don't know how to write in Go, like you're not a good developer or whatever. And I tried, like Sean, I tried so many times. And it would just like every single time I couldn't find like a good use case for it that like actually
Yeah.
was like a real thought out exercise. And
Hmm.
then, I would just like, oh, I could probably do this much faster in some other language that I know better, whether it be
Yeah.
Python or .NET, C Sharp or whatever, right? How do you kind of overcome that? Like oh, this would be so much faster and more enjoyable for me if I did it like with something that I know a bit better.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we get caught up in this hierarchy of language. Oh, you're a functional programmer, so you look down on the object-oriented programmer, and the object-oriented programmer looks down at the PHP programmer, and da da da. And I think that's a stratification, which I've been guilty of myself. I think doesn't serve us well. You know, I think that when you want to learn something like Go, having a problem that you're trying to solve that couldn't be done as well in another language is what should draw you there. Like
Yeah,
there isn't a reward for knowing how to work in every language.
there should be
You
though.
know,
There should be.
I don't, I
I'm
don't
just
know.
kidding.
I
Just kidding.
Yeah. So the idea of being polyglot around languages, I think, is important because I think developers, some developers at least, gain the benefits of seeing perspective by not having just one solution in front of them or one way to approach it. But that doesn't mean you should always be using the newfangled thing that's
Yeah.
sitting out there. Because most of the code we write, performance and memory management isn't that important.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for when it is something like Go or dropping down into C++ or assembly when you're writing like kernel drivers, don't write kernel drivers in Python
Yeah.
and don't write web development in a system language.
Yeah.
Go is clearly a system language. So you write tools in that. So knowing where that's important and knowing yourself about what you want to be doing. If it's important to you that you can write systems, write low-level things that are fast and safe and all of that, then you should be attracted to the languages that let you do that.
Sure.
If you're like me, where I teach and I write a lot of application work, a lot of CRUD, a lot of
Yeah.
business processes, there's no reason to do that in a low-level language.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense and doesn't help.
Yeah, it's also like, I think that's also a bit of a mystery to a lot of folks that are coming into the industry, right? Like 99% of the things you're going to build is like, oh, I have some data source. I have to have a UI on top of that data source, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's forms over data or it's some like data processing facility or whatever it is, but it's like, all of these line of business applications that exist in the planet, like here's data, get data over here in this format or whatever, right?
Right.
And I think that we kind of, we prop up like this the times when like other sort of implementations of software development are kind of being used, like, like Docker's written in here and Docker does this, or like metaprogramming with like tools for developers and things like that. But when you get into the real world and you're starting your first job, you're probably going to be building a Vue app that has a .NET backend or a Java backend, and here's a SQL database and an Oracle database and party on it.
Right. And I think what that belies is the other problem is this optimization. I think we're sold a bad bill of goods that performance is the most important part of development. And so what I hear from a lot of people is that, well, I'm doing this because it's more efficient. I'm doing this because it's more efficient. Well, the thing you're writing doesn't need to necessarily be efficient. Are you writing like financial transactions for Wall Street? Yeah, you're going to need all that.
Sure.
You're writing data entry so that people can order a pizza online? Less so, right?
Sure.
To sort of know your audience and where speed of development, ease of use, whatever it may be, how easy it is to maintain over time, because the company doesn't keep their developers very long because they don't, attract them. All of those should come into the sphere when you're talking about these things. So I really rail against the, when the TypeScript team decided to use not TypeScript to write or .NET to write this thing. They did it for a very specific purpose, and it made a lot of sense to me. And that's what we should be doing as developers, not to get on my soapbox.
Oh, sure.
Super high, but
I think too, like you make a good point. It's like, I think in tech and we're probably guilty. It's probably guilty in like all other facets of life too. But it's like we're looking for the thing that we can like, hey, I don't think that's very, like, people just find reasons to complain about things. Right. Like, the example that you're talking about where it's like the TypeScript team where it's like, oh, we're going to, use, I don't even remember what the story was, but it's like, oh, like they're not using .NET or whatever. And like the whole point of it was like, yes, because we're doing this one particular thing that this thing is really good at.
Yeah.
End of story. And then it took on some legs because that's what people want, is to take on legs. But
I think it also got some legs because we have this idea that the one language I know should be good at everything, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of that too. Like, I'll like have an idea like for like a little like utility that I want to build, and I'm like, I could I could probably do this, and I'll spin up a Visual Studio and a new .NET project, and then before I know it, like I have like 40 files. And like it's over architected, and then I think about it, I'm like, this is probably like 70 lines of Python.
Yeah.
It's like if it's like some like data thing, like, oh, I'm like massaging data into like look like this particular thing. And then I'm like, okay, well, where am I going to be most successful? Is it like building something that's got a ton of things, or taking a little bit more time, maybe with a language I'm not as familiar with, to learn it and understand why it's really good at what it does?
And I think sometimes it's worth the time to learn about another language, either to figure out that you don't like it or that it doesn't apply to the things you like to do. I mean, I don't mean that everyone should just stick in their lane, but I do think that getting too involved, or I'm going to learn Go because I heard on Twitter that the good developers all write in Go, which is kind of what happens in our industry.
Yeah, I think too. I think we're very guilty in tech of like fear of missing out, where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like this new hot thing, like the new version of some JavaScript framework. It's like
Hmm.
if you're not using, elephant.js, like are you even a developer if you're not using elephant.js? It's like, well,
Yeah.
elephant.js came out a month ago and every
Yeah.
other company in the world now uses elephant.js. It's like, okay, but all the other ones are probably just as good, right?
I mean, this could be said about AI right now.
Well, we can
Uh,
talk about that too. Yeah.
yeah. It just, I think it's not good for many developers to worry about the trends. There is that FOMO. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. I hadn't thought about it in that way. But it is. It's like, am I going to be left behind? Behind? Am I not going to be able to get a job in 5 years if I don't learn this right now? And I understand where that comes from. It's not just from, there's sort of an emotional place there of I need to take care of my family, and I also want to be in the cool kids. I don't want to be made fun of, and some of that's real, and some of that is why are we why are we doing that to each other?
Well, I think the reason why is because we want to think that we're better, like, and this is probably some super like sociological thing, but we want to feel like superior to others. It's like, well, I'm using this thing, so everybody that's not using it is inferior to me. And there's probably some of that, but it also just might be that like some people just can't help themselves with like always having to like be on the bleeding edge of things and like dealing with the pain of that, and they enjoy that a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think that second part makes a lot of sense. And I'm probably one of those people because until maybe the last couple of years, I've always tried to be on the latest version of whatever just to know it so I can talk about it.
Yeah.
But I also think there's another piece that as a development community or as individual developers, we should be encouraging people that you got the job, you don't have to prove it anymore, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
is that like, arrogance is really is often just this sort of mask about insecurity, or
Sure.
imposter syndrome is driving a lot of these decisions. Well, if I just learn this, then everyone will, I won't be able to be found out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a big thing. I didn't think about that. Like the imposter syndrome and then over pivoting to like try to attempt to give other people imposter syndrome, which,
Yeah.
yeah, which
Even if that isn't the
that's not
goal,
the,
but
yeah, that's not the goal, but
if
it's
it's
what's happening.
sad, yeah, yeah. But sometimes it's just a salve on an injured ego,
Yeah.
uh,
So how
not
do
to
you,
over
yeah, no,
analyze it all.
yeah, sure. Well, I mean, also too, like in for what it's worth, and I'm not trying to like boost your ego, but it's like as somebody that is thought of like a subject matter expert, like you've created a lot of stuff in this space that people have consumed. And when people come up to you and they ask you questions like, how do you try to not over explain and then not under explain and like give people that space to learn without coming off as like, pompous isn't the word because I know you're not very pompous, but it's like,
Sure,
you know what I'm trying to say, right?
I do, and I don't know, I don't know whether it was my insecurity early in my career that I've like never really believed I was some superstar. uh, Try to really come to it when I talk to developers, like especially after the talk when people come up and they have very specific
Yeah.
questions, to
Sure.
just
Yeah.
two things drive that to me. One is imagine myself in that position and trying to find that problem, trying to find a solution to that problem. And the other one, which I think is really important, is being willing to say, I don't know,
Yeah.
or I don't know, and let's find out, or I don't know, and let me email me
Get
here
back
and
to
I'll
you.
see
Yeah.
if I can help. Because uh, that notion, anyone who's heard me talk much on, .NET Rocks or whatever knows that I have this fight for the ability not to say I don't know. And I think as developers, we're often stuck in that. Like,
Yeah.
I should know, No, you can look up the stuff that you don't know. It's the
Yeah.
stuff you know that's important. And having that as sort of the core when I'm talking to people, like I don't know how to make it I don't know how to make it easier on other developers to like feel humble, but I know part of it was the work I did in becoming a better listener and letting go of some of my insecurity, and because it's very easy to get stuck in that. You just come out of school and everyone's like, "Oh, you haven't learned anything yet. You just went to school."
Yeah.
And that builds on itself instead of it being an inviting, nurturing process with other developers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you said something that resonated with me. Like I used to be very guilty of just kind of like BSing. Like, especially when I was
Hmm.
really early in career, like somebody asked me a question and I would kind of like dodge it, or I would come up with some.
Hmm.
I can talk very well, right? Like, I think that's kind of the
Yeah,
reason why I like speaking, is because I can talk even more. But it's one of those things. I caught myself one time saying something that deep down I was like, this is not accurate at all. And I realized like I'm at the point in my career where I can't say things that are incorrect anymore, because it's going to be a problem for somebody who is more junior than me, or somebody that's asking me a question and they come to me expecting like either here's the answer, or I don't know, let's figure it out. And if I'm giving them just the wrong answer intentionally because I don't want to feel insecure about myself,
yeah,
I'm doing it the whole thing a disservice. So I took it upon myself to like try more, to just be very, like, I think to what you're saying, be very comfortable just saying, yeah, I don't know. Like, let's figure it out. Because I used to really get nervous when, like, after a talk or whatever, and you get off the stage and people start to kind of pool down at the bottom because they have some very specific question that's very, very specific to what they're trying to do. And you're like, oh, this person is going to make me feel like an idiot. Not intentionally, but just because their question is probably hard.
yeah,
And I started just like I would come down and I would try to like lighten it and be like, just so you know, I probably don't know the answer to your question. And like just trying really hard to just, because it's all about empathy, right? Because that person is
yeah,
struggling. And if I try to like come off to like better, then it's like, oh, let me give you the answer that I think it is. I would much rather say, hey, just message me on social media. I can maybe connect you with the person that can help you, or I can look it up for you, or maybe like, and I've said this a few times, probably by the time you get home, you'll probably have figured it out, because
yeah,
it's one of the things I've always seen in my career too. Is like you turn your brain away from something and then it just comes to you naturally, because that's kind of how things
yeah,
work.
yeah. I used to go play pool at lunch to allow myself to solve that problem. Like that was part of my process early in
Okay.
my career because it was so prevalent that I would figure what I needed. Sort of my explanation of the rubber duck.
Yeah.
Um, But sometimes people need to be able to see that they don't need to know everything to really be able to be comfortable with it. It came in one Tuesday afternoon in Portland. I'd been hired to help with at Developmentor, which I mentioned before, and a big hero of mine back in the C++ days was Chris Sells. He's still around, but some people won't remember him from back then. And I just thought he knew everything. I'd read his books, and we were working on something one day, and I said, "Well, how does this work?" And he goes, "I don't know. Let's let's look at the docs." And that was so profound, that moment of like, "Oh, well, if he doesn't know, I certainly don't
Such
know."
a
You
wild
know?
response to like,
Yeah,
oh, like what is, I don't know. That's a great question. We should probably like whatever. I
yeah,
mean, there's so much power in just admitting that you're not the smartest person in the room.
yeah,
Like, I've never been in that situation, even though people have told me, like, hey, like, you're the smartest person in this room. Not actually saying it, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I
Like,
do.
yeah. And it's like one of those things where it's like, I try really, really hard not to be that smartest person in the room, because I've said this as a joke. If I'm the smartest person in the room has a problem.
Yeah,
And I think it's also, it's an attempt to kind of humble myself. Like, because even if I do know the answer, I don't know every answer. So there needs to be somebody
yeah.
else in this room that maybe has the answer to that, or the means to get the answer to that.
Well, what I think is interesting is some people ask me about, what is the best decision you made in your career? Was it learning .NET? Was it da da da? And it wasn't even a technical decision. The best decision I made was go from a company that I was the hero, right? I wanted to be the hero at that company. Every time someone had a problem, oh, I'll come in and fix it because I knew more than a lot of the people that worked there.
Sure. Sure.
And I made a decision to swallow my pride and go to some place where I would never be the smartest guy at that company. They already had so many great people that was coming along. Uh, but I really struggled with it because I didn't want uh, there to be this moment where all my fears around that I wasn't very good were confirmed, and that would be a situation. But I learned more there about how to deal with developers, how to write code, how to think about code, because I suddenly didn't have to be the one who knew everything.
Yeah. I mean, like I think I've said this a few times. There's power in not knowing,
Yeah.
because, and I haven't been in this situation yet in my life, which is a good thing, where I felt completely comfortable, like in a particular domain, right? Because I feel like the people that are quoted as experts, or the people that are kind of they label themselves as experts, like I'd imagine that's kind of a boring life. At least that's how I've always
Yeah.
figured it. It's like if you kind of know the answers to everything, or you think you know the answers to everything, it's like what is there, like what are you getting out of any of this other than just ego boosts constantly?
Well, there's also a bit about that in our industry, there is no one answer,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of us developers want to find that answer, the right language, the right framework, the right whatever it is. And that's one of the reasons I still like working with companies, because understanding the domain is fascinating to me because it always affects the technology choices you should be making.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit to, like, we're talking
Sure.
about like learning, and I want to kind of get from your, like, one, like when did you realize, like from like talking about content creation, right? When
Hmm.
did you realize that, like, hey, there's like not just like it scratches that itch of like I can help educate people and I can help kind of pass the ladder down, all the cliche phrases, but there's also like a financial backing to this. Like when did you realize that like you can like have a livelihood from like content creation and courses and things like that? When did you realize that like all of those things kind of fit together?
Well, I wish I had a really great answer for that, but I'll tell you the truth. I'd been hired by a company to build a 2-day shop. I wasn't really into training. I'd done a little, um, and I said okay because I really needed the job.
Sure.
And I built this 2-day course, went to Microsoft, taught it to some internal folks, and thought that was the end of it. I didn't really love the technology, and you'll find out why in a minute. But then Silverlight got released, and I'd
Mm,
been early in on this thing, and I was the only one who had a course. And so I started teaching that course. I expanded it to 3 days in person for a few years. I decided to sort of ride that wave. And I always enjoyed Silverlight, but I was never in love with it. I want it to be my whole world of what I taught and what I dealt with. Um, and so the content creation and being able to make money at creating courses was an accident.
mm,
And the same thing happened when I got into Pluralsight. I was like, there's no way video training is going to be able to pay my bills. But I knew a bunch of the people actually from Developmentor back in the days, and I went, I'm just going to create a couple of small courses for them, and I got my first royalty check, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
this might be important.
Yeah.
And so I wish I had a clear vision, but I didn't. I the only thing I really take credit for is when the moment comes, I'm willing to risk to see if it's anything, because I can always change the decision later.
Sure. But I do think that, not to say like not to discredit anything that you said, but like the flip side of that is also not good either. Whereas if you're looking for every opportunity to turn something into a revenue stream, like you see this a lot today, where it's like everybody's got a hustle, then they're trying to figure out like, okay, how do I become the next tech influencer? Like I just have to have hot take after hot take after hot take and go viral and all this stuff, right? Like, so I think that there is something to say that the way that you felt, like you kind of were into it a little bit late and you fell into it, or whatever you want to phrase it, like that's a preferred approach than thinking from the get, like I'm going to turn every opportunity to make money into making money.
Yeah, and luckily I've never been about chasing every dollar.
Sure.
Like the company I've run since 2007, I haven't tried to like build up a team of 20 people that I then turned out, because it that part of it wasn't interesting to me. And that sort of happens with the content, like the coding shorts that I've done on YouTube. I don't know, 120 of them or something. We've never had a sponsor except for maybe my company. And for anyone thinks that there's a lot of money there, I make about $50 a month on ads. And that's fine, because there's two things it's giving me. One, it's giving me exposure, helps me sort of advertise the clients that might want to hire me, and that's helpful. And the other part is I love that process of, oh, I've got an idea. It's not big enough for anything else. Like I can't make a conference talk out of it because it's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so that's been more of an outlet than like me thinking it's some smart business move.
Yeah, I think too, like, I think there's something to say about staying scrappy. I hate the phrase scrappy, but it's the best way to define it. It's like, there's something to say where it's like, okay, well, if I have creature comforts, like I'm going to get kind of lazy. Because that's how I think. Like I'm a lazy person to begin with. And I can just imagine it's like, okay, well, I'm going to build up this thing so I can do less work and less work and less work. And then eventually I'm like not doing anything and I'm just sitting there. And that turns into something that I don't like, right? Because, at the end of the day, like you want to feel like you're bringing some value to it, right? And if you're not, then it isn't very enjoyable at the end of the day. Because I think one of the things that, good.
Go ahead, finish.
No, I was just gonna say, like the one thing I think that we're all looking for is like bringing value into something, right? Whether it be at home or at work, whatever.
Yeah, and I think that for me, made a decision after making some pretty bad decisions earlier in my career about money and all of that, that I felt like I had a little more freedom to do just the things I wanted, because we never had debt. After I had a bankruptcy and everything was really ugly for a few years, I've just decided that I don't need debt. Like my house was the only real debt I had, and tried to pay cash for everything. And that lessens your need to make those short-sighted decisions, that everything has to be for money's sake. Because at the end of the day, I want to feel like, I'm being driven. Even when at the height of Pluralsight, when I didn't have to probably work as much because it was a really good revenue stream and all of this, I was still learning because I have passion for that. And if you're just doing it for the money, I think it shows.
Sure. Yeah.
I think people can smell that.
Yeah. I think also too, like, I think you're smart enough to recognize, like, not like all good things do come to an end eventually.
Yeah.
So like, over the course of time, it's like, okay, maybe this way of maybe this particular revenue stream not going to dry up, but it's not going to be as fervently popular as it was, And then you run into situations if you kind of live outside of your means and you have this expectation where I'm making lots and lots of money from this thing, or not lots and lots of money, but I'm making this amount of money, and then all of a sudden that money isn't there anymore. And you're like, oh shoot, now what?
Right. Yeah, and some of that's just experience. I lived through 1997. I lived through 2000. 9/11. Lived through 2008, and all those were moments like, is any of this stuff really worth it?
Yeah.
Like, we could have a lot more nicer things, and we have a lot of nice things. Don't get me wrong, but none of it's worth mortgaging our future, and
Sure.
that's been a personal decision me and my wife have made. You know, she's not as much on board,
Sure. Sure.
but you know, that's the case with most marriages. Uh,
Yeah, I'm the other
but I
way.
think
My
in the
wife
long
is
run,
like,
it's helped
yeah,
us.
yeah, I'm the other way. Like I spend money super irrationally. Like I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so when I
Uh-huh.
see something, I just buy it. And
Yeah.
my wife is a bit more frugal than I am, and she also likes buying me things, and she gets very upset because if
Hmm.
she's like, I can't buy you anything because if you want it,
Yeah.
you just buy it. I'm like, yeah, that's great, right? That we can just buy things like isn't it so great that if I see this dumb thing like some dumb
Uh-huh.
gadget, I just go and buy it? Like, isn't that great? She's like, no, it's not great. Like you have a
Uh-huh.
whole room full of your dumb gadgets. Like,
Well, I feel like that's a pall on our industry. Like so many of us just go, "Ooh, that's fun," or "Ooh,"
yeah,
you know. Every once in a while, someone will get me something, and I'm like, "I didn't know that existed. That is amazing," you know.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't. It's because I haven't had a lot of self-control. I just won't go into debt for it. Doesn't mean I'm not spending the money.
Yeah, I think one thing too is like I get very excited about things. And then I'm not saying that I'm always, but I'm let down a lot about I'll think,
Hmm.
oh, I'm gonna buy this thing and it'll be really really cool. This is top of mind for me because I just made a fairly not large but a rational purchase because I thought something would be cool and then I got it. I'm like, this isn't very cool at all. And
Yeah,
um and my wife was
and that's why
like,
you have two strats.
well, we're going to talk about this for a second. All right. All right. So for the folks that aren't actually watching, like behind me in my home office, I have some guitars on the wall. And I have two electric guitars and two acoustic guitars you can't really see. The electric guitars are two Fender Stratocasters. One of them, which is the one that's directly above my head, I made myself. I built it
Oh,
myself.
nice.
Yeah. And when I say I built it myself, I didn't lave the wood, but I bought all the individual components and I built it and I did the soldering and all of that because I wanted to get Eric Clapton's replica Fender. And when I looked at the price, I'm like, oh, I don't have $4,000. So I
Yeah.
started looking at all of like, okay, well, all this stuff is very well documented, like what makes up this guitar. So I looked at how much would it cost if I took all of the parts and put it together myself? Because I'm a naturally tinkerer, curious person, and it was like less than 1,000. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do that. So that's that guitar. And then the other guitar, which is like a bluish sort of color. My wife, one of her hobbies is paint pouring or drip painting. So
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, so like you have acrylic paint and then you put paint in it and then you dip stuff into it and things. So she was trying to think of like something cool. I'm like, why don't you do it to a guitar? And she's like, well, I don't know how that would work. And I'm like, well, we'll buy like one of those like, $100 and some like kits off of Amazon. So even if it doesn't sound good, it doesn't care because it'll be art. So
Yeah.
she did that, and that's like a gift that she got me. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
nice.
and for what it's worth, like these things are art anyway. Like I'm not very good. I don't play very much. So I just every now and then I'll look at them and I'll take them off the wall and I'll play them for like 2 seconds and I'm like, oh yeah, I still remember how to play some guitar, which is all I really care about. I'm not going to
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
virtuoso. It's like I just want to be able to like, can I play Sweet Home Alabama? Cool. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll try again next year. Right. So like that's my relationship. I tried really hard to get better, and it was far enough along in my guitar playing that I realized, oh, like I'm not gonna relearn how to do some of this stuff because it's gonna be way too hard. Like something as simple as like how you hold the guitar on the neck. Like I have smaller hands, so like bar chords can be kind of challenging sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I had a guitar teacher, and he was trying to like reteach me how to hold the guitar, and I was like, this isn't gonna work, man. Like I've been doing it like this
Hmm.
for 20 years. Like you're not going to be able to teach me how to hold a guitar neck. Like it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have the same problem. It's interesting. I don't know anyone else is going to care about this, but my wife also does acrylic pouring.
Oh,
She
cool.
hasn't done it in a couple years, but yeah, I never told her to put it on a guitar because I don't want her touching my guitars.
Well,
But
that was the whole thing. Is you buy some $100,
absolutely.
piece of crap from Amazon, and worst case, it doesn't play very well. Which I can tell you right now, Sean, it does not play very well. Uh, so it just looks cool on the wall.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah. And I think too, like, and I think one of the things that's and this is a side tangent as well. It's like there are so many people in technology or in tech in general that like have some other like more, I guess, more traditional art background. Like they sculpt or they draw or they play music or whatever, right? And I always think it's funny because like there's always been this connotation that like people in tech are just like super left brain. They're not creative. Like, you know, they just sit in their room and they just like care about math and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I went on this diatribe at some point on this show, probably like, and I was like, no, like writing code is like the most artistic expression there is. Like, and I was trying to explain it. And then I kind of did like this, you know, Pepe Sanchez, like pointing at like all the strings, connecting everything. Right. But like, I'd love to get your, as somebody who also like, you know, you play music, like, and you also have like, you know, you do video editing and you have all these other, like, I guess, more traditional artistic skills. Like, what are some of the things that you think about when it comes to like writing software that you think is a creative process?
Well, it's interesting because I certainly think there's a creative process with writing code, not quite as creative as like art. You know, maybe I'm downplaying it, but there is, I think creativity is the thing that makes our business interesting versus like, you know, electrical engineering. I feel like there might be less of that, or civil engineering. Like
Sure.
we talk about ourselves as engineers, but I feel like we have a lot more ability to be purely creative
Yeah.
in the solutions that sort of come up. And I think that the reason why there's a lot of musicians is I think there is a parallel in that like development has to happen in some sort of framework, not like Angular, but like
Yeah.
it has to make enough sense that it doesn't crash a computer
Mhm.
or it doesn't fail, right? And I feel like music is very much like that. Like
Sure.
we've decided to live in a 12 tone musical world.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the things you have that you have, and certainly there are a bunch of other places where that's not true. But for traditional Western music, and then be creative within that space, I think that very much is that same sort of thing. And for me, technology and programming takes a lot of my life, and I love it. My music, whenever I do music, it's completely analog. Like I don't
Mm,
use almost anything. I've done some recording where I've had to use like synth basses and things like that, um, but for the most part, I want to put a mic in front of a guitar and play and sing. Like it's
yeah.
I don't, I don't want to, have a whole set of pedals, and I don't
Okay.
play much electric guitar. That's probably why. Um, and when I started to do the documentary films, it was very much similar to that. Like I didn't want to be good necessarily at the editing because it's a very different sort of thing.
Hmm.
But in many ways, um, that enjoyment of building a story out of whatever you can teach somebody sort of felt like it was the same sort of muscle
Sure.
when I started doing the films. Um, the difference really was, and I don't know whether anyone cares about this, is that in documentary films you can't dictate what anything you're going to cut together looks like because
Yeah.
you can't tell people what to say. And to
Yeah.
me, that was a very interesting, fascinating part of it. Is like I don't know what the story is going to be because I haven't talked to them yet,
And also,
right?
you're just like you're collecting tons of footage, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like, you know, it's, I don't know how some of these documentary filmmakers that take like thousands of hours of footage and they turn it into like a 2 hour documentary. I don't
Yeah.
I like one of the things that I really appreciate. I like watching like nature docs. It's like Planet Earth or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just like, man, they recorded tens of thousands of hours to get like this 30-second clip of like whales breaching or whatever,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
And I have a this the patience that's involved in something like that I just don't have. So like,
Yeah.
you know, I imagine I'm like these people are sitting on this boat, it's freezing cold, but like they love what they do so much they're willing to just put
Hmm.
up with like a lot of monotony. And sure, they're doing other stuff. They're not just sitting there with the camera waiting, but like there's something to say where it's like if you like something enough, you'll put up with a lot of nonsense, and that correlates very well into tech because we put up with a lot of nonsense, like
Yeah.
in tech, because we like it so much.
Yeah, waiting for that, epiphany like moment that like everything comes together. And I think that's what drives me, every day when I'm working on something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now I understand how that works.
Yeah.
And this is the way it should be, or this design I'm not happy with, but it will do. And then you go to bed and you wake up with, oh, of course. Like those are the reasons I do development. In any case, I love those moments.
Well, I think as a species, we're always chasing dopamine, right? Like,
Sure.
and I think, there's no better dopamine hit than like, you start your application and it looks the exact way you want it. It's doing the exact thing you want. And, you walk around, you pump your fist, you do whatever you do to celebrate. And then you sit back down and then you type in like 4 more lines and then it's all broken again.
Yeah.
So then you got to chase the dopamine again.
Yeah.
One thing too that I'm very fascinated about, and we were talking a little bit about like AI and stuff, is like we're in this world now where it's kind of this, and I don't want to say this AI thing, but like AI is kind of creeping into all these different facets of tech, like coding assistants, being able to get like information like readily and immediately, like the idea of replacing content, like, oh, like people are definitely using it to help write blog posts or whatever, and that's cool, whatever. But it's like, what are your thoughts? And it's like, because it's not just like targeted at one area of tech. It's like AI is all of tech now. It's like it's umbrelling itself. Umbrelling is not a word, but whatever. Umbrelling itself over like the tech industry. Like, what are your thoughts about like solid, valuable implementations of AI in particular areas of tech versus like, no, this should completely stay away from this area. Like, and if somebody tries to do it, like we should just yell at them and call them a non-believer and shame them.
Well, I have sort of a different perspective about AI in that I feel like as developers, we've been using AI for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
Like when I started, it was a text editor and the compiler was the only clue I had whether something worked or not. But in the last 20 years, you could argue that ReSharper is an AI engine, even though it's not a large language model, but it's trying to help you do things. IntelliSense, like all of that is incremental to what we're seeing now from like Claude and some of the other coding sort of models. And so I think as developers, figuring out how we can use it and not overuse it. How can I help it do my job, but reduce the monotony?
Sure.
When I was doing C++, I did not want to let go of control of memory management because I thought I was the only one to do it well enough. And
Sure.
then you look at the way that
Lo
garbage
and
collection
behold,
works in
yeah.
a variety of language. I should have never been in that space. And I feel very much that way about where we are with AI. Like my small experience with using Claude, not huge, is that build me a project as a starting point. So the replacement for like a new project wizard and refactoring.
Yeah.
I'll go find where I did this and replace it
Sure.
all. Are the like two places where, oh, this isn't any different from what we've been doing. It's just a more powerful tool.
Yeah.
I think we get caught up um, in the idea that prompt engineering or vibe coding or whatever you want to call it is the solution for what we're looking for. And I think for some cases that might be the case, but ultimately to build the thing you want to do, if writing specs back in the 80s and 90s excited you, you'll love this because you have to write a spec for AI to put out what you want.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
isn't a shortcut.
Oh, I know somebody who like will type like 4 paragraphs into a prompt to get like a very small little thing. And like the question is like, okay, at what point are you just like over engineering like the prompt? But in some cases, like you have to give so much context to these things. And like you're like 98% of the way there, but it's like I can't figure out this 2%. And you got to give all this context to be able to get to that point. How I phrase it to people is like, I think AI is really good for the bookends of something you're trying to do. Like the getting started and then the finishing coat of paint. like the like whatever it is, the polish or whatever. Like that stuff in the middle is like what like you can do. And like sure, like you can inject a little bit here and there, but like I think I've used this example a few times. Like I wanted to build like a browser extension and do something I'd never done it before. I know JavaScript, but I've never built like a browser extension. I don't know like all of the weird things that need to happen in that space. So I just went to an AI thing, and I was like, I want to build a browser extension that does this, something similar to this. I also want to do this, and literally scaffolded it out, the entire like form, like folder structure and everything. And at that point in time, I'm like, okay, well now it's just JavaScript. I could just write JavaScript and just do what I need to do. And if I tried to like learn how to like, do like the manifest file, I could learn it eventually to like add things to it. But like initially, like it was just too overwhelming. I took a sample wouldn't work. I took another sample wouldn't work. But this thing actually like got me to a point where I can actually start like bringing my own value to it.
Well, and I think we've had this problem, let's say in the .NET space, create a new ASP.NET project.
Sure.
You're getting a lot of code generated that you now own. And I don't think AI is any different. If we take the idea that the generation can help us do our job faster or better, whatever you want to call it, we still are responsible for the code that we eventually use. AI is just automated copy and paste from Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You still have to own what and be able to maintain what you've done. And I don't think many people are going to lose their jobs because of that.
No.
Maybe some of the customer service, or there's always going to be some place where it does a good enough job that it's really going to impact people. But for the most part, most of us aren't writing the same drudgery every single day.
Yeah.
That could be automated. Otherwise, it would have been automated out from under us a long time ago.
And if we are writing the same drudgery, the question becomes, it's like are you like getting any value for self-value out of that? Like if your job is to do data entry and it's like, oh, I take this Excel spreadsheet and then I put it into this website or whatever it is, right? Like, are you bringing, like, you're a human being. Like, can you bring more to the table than looking at a spreadsheet and typing in? And I know that comes from a crazy place of privilege, because some people, that's what they can do. But, I believe, honestly, that people are capable of doing so many things, and something that a simple computer program can do, like, I think most humans are above that.
I could see that. It was really brought to my attention when I did the Hello World film that there is a difference when you start in development or tech in any way, that once you've learned how a computer can help do things, something changes in your mind. Sure. You're no longer sort of stuck.
Yeah.
And so I would agree with you, and I think that's part of that.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I think that I'd like to kind of talk about as we wrap up is like, where do you see this going? Like, I mean, like, I'm not looking for like Shawn's like, chisel it into stone, like this is what it's going to be. But it's like, what does the marriage of like actual developers and AI coding assistants / large language models, like what is the happy marriage of those two things, in your opinion?
I think we're starting to see it now, and that's agents.
Yeah.
Like you have a piece of AI that has the context of what you're working on. So it is while we're doing coding that can help us. Oh, I need a regular expression here, or not necessarily to tell us what to do, because I just find that annoying. But I think it's that where we're using AI to help us solve these little problems that we used to have to go search and find, or, I think we're at the level of something different than IntelliSense. IntelliSense stopped everyone having to know every piece of syntax, right? Sure. Used to be that you had to know the syntax of every function you had to call, and that went away with things like IntelliSense or whatever the technology was in other editors. And I think we're at that point for larger pieces. Like, do I want to really say that I need a new class that looks like this other class but is for this other noun?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, probably not.
And I think that's where we're at. I don't think we're going to get away with not having code being code, because that's that's been a consistent thing throughout my career. Case tools in the late 80s. Then you got components are going to be everything, and secretary is going to write software. And then we got into, and now we're into AI. Like it
Yeah.
keeps like everyone's trying to get rid of the developer because they know that the developers tend to be mercurial and think differently than other people. But I think it's still going to be required. You can have code generators today that build you out an entire iOS game where you just tweak some of the things and change some of the art. But those aren't the apps that are being sold, right?
Yeah.
Those are just flooding the market and no one's buying them.
Yeah.
Um, so if you want to do that, you can, but I think I think you still need the creativity to be able to engage users, to excite companies, to, pay the bills in your for your salary because your company wants something that will help drive them, ultimately impacting other humans.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think also too, like as um I like to think of myself as, I am a functioning being, right? Like, and I use this analogy all the time, whatever. And that thing is just like sand that I've convinced is intelligent,
Right.
right? So it's like there is, and there's a lot of this like, oh, this AGI thing or whatever. It's like they're gonna, Skynet, all of that. It's like, no, I don't, not in my lifetime. And if it is in my lifetime, like I'm hoping that the people that are in charge of it recognize like, oh, this is probably a terrible idea. Like we should not like let this thing do the thing that like has been in every bad science fiction movie for all of eternity. Not to say that Terminator is bad sci-fi. It's great sci-fi, but my point is still valid. Um, this conversation I've really enjoyed because I think one of the things I really appreciate, and we were talking about this before we get started, is like you have very like practical and rational like thought of things, and I tend to be like a bit on the like, this is gonna ruin my life sort of thing. So it's really good
Uh-huh.
talking to people that have a very different outlook than I do.
I think
um
they call it cynical, but go ahead.
I tell my therapist, like I tell my therapist, like I'm just a pessimist. She's like, no, you're a realist. I'm like, that doesn't make it any better. Like saying that like
It does a little.
say, well, no, because that means that the real world sucks. Like that's just the pessimist in me, right? Well, yeah. Um,
Well, I've seen the news today. Maybe you're right.
uh, yeah, we went the entire time without talking about the news, which I think is good. It's like
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
if anything,
I
it's
don't want
like
to start there.
yeah, if anything, like if I can save somebody, if I can talk to somebody for an hour without like once mentioning like current events, like outside of tech, like this is a huge success. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so for folks that you aren't familiar with what Sean's doing out there, I highly recommend you do it. There'll be some links in the show notes to some places on social media to find him. Best place is probably Blue Sky for you, or just go to your website.
Blue
So
Sky, you can
yeah,
contact me through my website.
yeah.
We have customers in the U.S. and we
Mhm.
have a new company here in the Netherlands. So they all go to the same website. I localized the website to Dutch and English, which was another learning exercise.
Yeah,
Um,
and we didn't even talk about the fact that you now live in Europe, which is you're so fancy.
I
Um,
just want to be closer to certain conferences that
yeah,
don't want me to speak at them. Yeah, yeah.
we went so long, Sean, without talking about it. We talked for an hour. We just dropped it just then. Um, no, I mean, again, like for folks, reach out to Sean if you have any questions about anything because I can equate to this. I think when I was like second year out of college, and this is gonna make you feel like an old fart, but I apologize. I got a
I
Pluralsight,
am.
I got a Pluralsight subscription, and I go there and I was like, oh, like I need to learn like this WCF thing, and I was going through like looking at different like .NET sort of things, and I see all the people that I know, and one of those people now is Shawn Wildermuth, who I'm getting the opportunity to talk to, which is always fun. Like, it's one of those things where it's always funny meeting the people that like kind of taught you how to be the person that you are, which is kind of strange.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but like so, I just want you to recognize that you had you were successful in helping one person get to wherever they are in tech, which is a good thing.
As long as there's one.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's all that matters, right? You just do it for the one person. That person is yourself, and if other people get to enjoy it too, why not? Um,
Yeah.
So
I
before we,
don't tire hearing that.
oh, you
And
don't? That's good.
it
That's good.
really validates that the work I've done matters, not just that it was getting it for the money, but that it
Yeah.
was something that's helped people get a job or whatever. It always makes me happy because that uh, that was one of the reasons I was hoping to do it. And so when I
Yeah.
hear it, it does feel good.
It puts a face to whatever pays your mortgage, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
you helped pay for my mortgage. Thank you so much. So before we sign off, do you have any parting words, my friend?
Just be kind to yourself. If uh, the advice I like to give people is uh, that you're I don't want to get into like a Stuart Smalley thing,
Oh,
but
Mad
you
TV
got the
was so good
job.
back in the day. This is, or not Stuart
Yeah,
Smalley, SNL. Yeah. Um,
SNL. Yeah, yeah. Um, but I think a lot of developers are still stuck in that they're worried about um, that they're not good enough for the job or that other people are going to be better at their job. And just, be yourself in this industry. I think
yeah.
that's where happiness and making enough money to feed your family, I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like if you're gonna go around being a miserable person like me, like what you're saying is like I'm just not. It's just that's not the way to do it, which is fine. That's fair. Uh,
Yeah, I'm not sure I would call you cynical, but
I
or
don't know.
pessimistic, but I
We'll
hear you.
we'll see. I mean, you see me for a very short amount of time when I'm at my utmost happiness, when I'm at a conference or I'm talking to somebody on a podcast. Like you don't live in the drudges of being married to me, right? Like
That's
so.
true.
Um,
Yeah, both of
yeah,
our wives are taking one for the team. I
that's
recognize that.
I mean, I tell my wife all the time, like, I understand that I'm not an easy person to be in a relationship with. And she just nods her head and smiles, which I mean,
Hmm.
whatever. I must have
Yeah.
some other qualities that are good, I guess. Um, this has been great, Sean. I really appreciate it. It's been an awesome opportunity to chat with you. We only see each other a couple of times a year, if that, and
Yeah.
it's always good to catch up. And I appreciate the folks who are tuning in live watching this, and for the folks that are listening in the future. So, for my friend Sean, this is Isaac Levin, and this has been Coffee and Open Source. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.